Everyone's talking about Mackenzie Mgbako.
Did you have to look up how to say his last name? Because I literally had no idea. I've not heard anyone actually say it.
Actually, to me, those names are easy because there's so many letters that you don't pronounce.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I just don't know which ones are silent. I was like, okay, that works.
Well, usually you just kind of guess on the beginning and you just hit the last part strong. Mackenzie Mgbako.
well, that works. That is the big question, right? Like I've said this since he got on Indiana's radar, is that he is exactly the type of player that Indiana is looking for. He would there is a Mackenzie Mgbako size hole in the Indiana roster right now, and he's like kind of, remember last summer, Mike Woodson was talking about Trace Jackson Davis is the missing piece. That's how he described it when Trace was deciding whether to come back. And I think Mgbako is kind of the same way, right? They need athleticism on the wing, and that's exactly what he is described as the best shooter in his class, in terms of just pure can chuck it from 3-point range, and so that's what Indiana needs
for his position.
For his position, yes. And that's what Indiana needs at that position, and they haven't had it in quite a while. I mean, basically he's Miller Kopp, but super athletic. Now Miller Kopp is not athletic, but he was somewhat limited in that area.
But he's also Miller Kopp. He'll put shots up. He can get to the rim. He can get to the rim. He can rebound. He can do a lot of things that I'm not. This is not against Miller Kopp, but yes, he can do a lot of things that Indiana needs. I sent out a tweet the other day that the position that Indiana has is there for the taking for him.
Yeah,
to be the starter, to be the main guy in that role. I don't know that that's the case at Kansas.
Right.
Not only is he not going to be the featured attraction, he's not even. There's a guy that's already in his position that apparently is not too bad. And
it's funny. I think I can't remember. I saw one of the Kansas beat writers yesterday. I can't remember who it was, but basically they were talking about how
I saw that.
Yeah, they were basically saying like the guy in his position, they were almost surprised that they're pursuing Mgbako because the guy in his position is really good, and it seems like there would be kind of a logjam. There wouldn't be enough minutes to go around for either of them. So I'm sure he may very well sign with Kansas. Kansas is absolutely loaded. If you go there, they will probably be the national championship favorites going into next season, regardless of whether.
And they are already exactly so.
Right.
That's kind of amazing that a team that's that loaded already.
Right.
How can you're thinking? All right, there's no way that he can get the minutes that he can get at Indiana.
Right.
Which, if your concern is, you want to win, but you want to go on. The goal is to go on. Right. He's going to get paid at either place.
Yeah.
So is Indiana a national title contender? No. But with him, could they be? Yeah. When you add him and another two guard, I think that they could quickly become that because they have a lot of great pieces there. I'm not saying they're at Kansas, but it gives him the opportunity for more minutes to be the featured player, to be. I think that's and this is why the experience that Jalen Hood-Schifino had is pretty significant, right? I think it's something that he at least has to consider, and I'm sure it's a factor in Indiana being in the top two, which is that they brought in one 5-star recruit I guess 2 5-stars in last year's class, but one that was planning on being a one and done. And Indiana not only got him to be a one and done, they raised his draft stock as the year went on. Jalen Hood-Schifino would not have been a lottery pick had he not had the season he had. And he might not be anyway, but he's going to be close. And he would not have been had he not had the season he had at Indiana. And he might not have been had he gone to a team where there was more talent in the backcourt, right? because Indiana put him in a position to be that featured player in the backcourt, and Indiana is going to do the same thing with Mgbako if he goes there. So that's something that he has to consider, and I'm certain that is why Indiana has made a run here late, because he sees that option.
And like I said, he would be the guy, and then that would take Indiana is not in my personal top 3 in the Big Ten, but if they land Mgbako, that starts to change. And if they had a 2-guard, Indiana puts themselves squarely in the conversation with Michigan State, Purdue, for this at the top of the Big Ten next year. But we'll see how that turns out tomorrow. Everyone is thinking, oh, it's all about NIL. No. There's no way that between these 2 schools that I believe it's coming down to NIL, because Indiana hasn't had that many really NIL hits, as I call them. By hits, I mean having to pay. You had Khalil Ware, but he's, as far as elite level, big time gets, they have room. I mean, they're not. It's weird talking about it like this, but I'm going to say it because it's funny. They got Jalen Hood-Schifino off the payroll. They have Trace Jackson-Davis off the payroll now. Those 2 right there combined for a bunch of money. The bulk probably of NIL basketball money that was paid out. So they got room. They have room, and they know how desperately they need this. So maybe they make an even better offer. Plus, Kansas has just added 7 guys who all want paid, and the 7th was Hunter Dickinson, who wanted paid most of all.
Right. That's so Hunter Dickinson. Okay. Yeah, Hunter Dickinson apparently got. Right. Well, it's Kansas, so there's always money in the banana stand, right? But you're right. Like I thought the same thing. There is, right? Like it's Kansas. It's going to be very tough for Kansas to lose someone because they don't have the money available. But you're right. They have paid out a lot this offseason. Hunter Dickinson made that explicit when he talked about not getting 6 figures at Michigan. And that's the thing is, like, even a rich school like Michigan that has a ton of money, they're focused on football, right? So like it's not like these schools have a bottomless well of money that they can draw from. And so I wonder whoever we never got any clarity on who the guy is who paid the $10 million to get Archie out of there by himself a couple of years ago. Get him to write a check. Is he available? What can he do?
Oh, I'm sure he's available. Yeah. Mattress Mac, baby. They need Mattress Mac.
Yeah, right.
He was down at the Kentucky Derby. Mattress Mac individually changed, and ever does so every year now, changed the odds on the Derby.
Oh, yeah, because he placed such a big bet.
And they literally watch him placing his bet, and then after he places his bet, you see the odds. They changed. Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you need some Mattress Mac money. That would guarantee that, man. I'm kind of, yeah, we'll see. I think people are going to tire of that, though, at some point. They're going to tire of writing checks. They're going to tire of this constant money drain, I think, unless you're making so much money that it's ridiculous. I'm not that person. Maybe Dylan is that person making so much money they can just keep tossing it out. But I'm just thinking at some point, some of these guys are going to get tired of writing checks, but some of them just have more money than we can fathom.
Yeah, I mean, and that's been the thing, right? Is right now it's kind of, and you've heard this term a lot the last couple of years, but it is kind of the Wild West, right? It's these guys basically saying, I want to win a championship. What is it going to take? What is it going to take to make sure that that happens? And I think what a lot of guys have realized over the last couple of years is there's no amount of checks you can write that is going to guarantee you a championship because the other team has checks too. So I think eventually this is probably going to stabilize as these guys are like, all right, I want to win a championship. I want these guys, but let's try to rein this in a little bit, and maybe it won't. Maybe we'll just keep going like this for a while, and it'll just be until there's some kind of employee structure put in place, because that's pretty obviously where this is headed, is these guys signing actual contracts and being looked at as employees. James Franklin said as much a couple of weeks ago. It's just a question of how fast do we get there. But at that point, I'm sure there would be some kind of salary structure put in place. But yeah, these guys, like, they want to win a championship, and right now they're trying to buy one, and it's not really happening because the other guys have money too.
Jamie asking, when a player graduates or leaves the program, is the NIL contract voided? Is an NIL deal only a season at a time? Well, NIL deals are set in a way to try to keep the players in town. By that, I mean to fulfill their obligations. You generally have to be here. You couldn't transfer to Oregon and fulfill your obligations. Therefore, you would not get paid. But a lot of times these guys are paid half of it, like up front. I don't know how, but I think that there should be contracts. I'm like, you know what? Everything is trending in the players' favor almost to an unbelievable degree. It's swung 180 degrees and hard from things being against the player. Now it's so pro that it's too pro. They have so much freedom. They have more freedom than anybody. They have more freedom than professionals do.
And literally. Right. And I mean, and that's the thing, is I think a lot of players would welcome contracts, because the secret of this is that all these guys that enter the portal, and we've seen this in college football, especially Colorado is a great example, that all these guys, there are a lot of these guys that enter the portal that are basically told in no uncertain terms by their coaches, hey, you're going into the portal. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. And so, like, basically they're getting cut without actually saying they're getting cut, right? And so if you had contracts, you could avoid that kind of thing. So I think there would be stability on both sides if you got to a contract structure. Now, of course, no one wants to go, the NCAA doesn't want to go to a contract structure, and the schools don't want to go to a contract structure, if at all possible, because that says that these players are employees, that they have rights outside of just being students. And that's kind of the third rail that the NCAA doesn't want to touch, that it's been fighting against for so long. But it seems like that's where we're headed. It's so much instability that it feels like we're going to get there eventually.
Russell says he believes that a Kansas player entered the portal yesterday.
Okay.
And I'm trying to find that up real quick.
Or he might be talking about Julian Phillips, the former 5-star McDonald's All-American from Tennessee, who entered the portal, who was one of Indiana's first offers when Mike Woodson got the job. And I was looking at his stuff. He seems like he could be a great backup plan if Mgbako doesn't come to IU. He's also 6'8", super athletic on the wing, not nearly as good of a shooter, but that's the type of player that Indiana is looking for, and would be another guy like Khalil Ware, who was a 5-star recruit last year, who didn't exactly live up to the huge hype that he had, but the talent was very obviously there, and he's a Mike Woodson type player. Yeah, Robert is saying what I'm saying. I think that's. I think you're not going to be able to get Phillips if you get Mgbako, but I think if Mgbako chooses Kansas, then Phillips becomes the guy that you want. He's perfect for that position to 90% the degree that Mgbako is.
Yeah, but at some point, Indiana has to start beating these guys.
They do.
For these recruits. They just have to win some wars, because there's wars on the court and there's wars off the court, and they're not winning these, what I call them, yet. They're getting, what they get is they're not they're not completely there at a recruiting standpoint yet. I don't think where they get the guy that they want.
Yeah, I mean, and it's for the last 10 years or so that they've been able to get really good kids in, but they've also missed on some really good kids. It's one of those things where their recruiting has been a cut below the very best in the country for a while here, right? And it's going to be hard to change that. But Mike Woodson was not brought in to turbocharge recruiting. He was brought in to continue very good recruiting and to take them over the top with X's and O's, right? And he's done that to a certain extent already. He's proved his coaching bona fides in his time at IU, and now they're really trying to translate that into, can we get some super elite talent in here? And I think they're not there yet, as you said. It's unclear whether they will get there under Woodson, but his coaching allows them to have a baseline, and as long as you keep stacking up these guys who improve their draft stock when Mike Woodson is the coach, you're going to make it more and more likely that you get those guys in.